In this lesson, we'll learn how to wire parameters in Max. Now, the name sounds cool, but what does wire parameters do for us? Well, it allows us to control a parameter by another parameter's value. Alright, so we essentially connect them both together. Alright, so let's get in and control our engine rotation by the custom parameter we've built for it. So we have a number of ways of accessing the wire parameter dialog. We can either head it back over to animation and choose wire parameters, or we see the hotkey control 5. But either way, what we want to do is first get to the attribute we'd like to be the driver, okay, or the main control. That's going to be our engine rotation. We'll head over to modified object. This is how we access our attribute holders custom attributes or custom parameters. It's not under transform, but again under modified object, engine params, custom attributes, and there it is, the engine rotation. So from there we have this perforated line, and we basically now choose what object we'd like to connect to. And in this case, it's going to be that secondary control. Again, we don't want to connect it to our main control because we will lose control over one of its tracks or one of our axes. So I'll go ahead and choose our point helper, and then from there we'll get to its transform, rotation, zero Euler, and we'll want to choose the rotation Y. Now, how did I know rotation Y? I'll go ahead and minimize this. If we were to go ahead and select our helper, go to our rotate tool, notice, alright, so we could see it, oh, it's rotate Y because we just went to the rotate tool, and we know that we want to control the turning of the engine, and that's the Y-axis, of course. Well, the view coordinate system isn't always going to give us the correct axis that we need to choose from. So when it comes to rotation, we actually want to switch this to gimbal. This shows us the true axis that we're rotating in, and you could kind of see the rotate tool's orientation kind of flip, going from view, okay, where Z is straight up, to gimbal, where now Z is pointed downward. Alright, so gimbal is going to show us our true axis, and as we can see, it's actually going to be, again, our Y-axis. Okay? And it's going to be the same thing on the opposite side as well, the Y-axis. Alright, so now that we know that, let's head over back to our wire parameter dialog. Okay, so here's how we set up these connections. We're going to either have the Y rotation track control engine rotation by choosing the middle arrow, or we can go ahead and use that bottom arrow to control the engine, to control the rotation Y by the engine rotation. Now we can even set up a dual connection where we can control both attributes by using the top. I don't like to use this too much because at times it's a bit unstable, but I'll show you how this works. So we can go ahead and choose the top arrow, choose connect. Okay, so now notice both have turned green, okay, letting us know that they both can be controlled and give us the result that we want. So notice now, if we were to go to our main controller and start to move that engine rotation, we can twist that engine around. Also notice if we were to go to our controller and go to the rotate Y, that will also control the rotation. And if we go ahead and change this value by simply rotating in the Y, if we go back, notice the engine rotation value is also going to change. And I'll go ahead and right click on the slider to bring that back to 0. But again, it works good for basic connections, but when you start to get into more complicated things, you may not want to use that double arrow. So I'll go ahead and disconnect this by choosing disconnect. Alright, so let's go ahead and choose that bottom arrow so we can have the engine rotation custom parameter control the rotate Y. I'll go ahead and choose connect. So now you can see that the track that's being controlled is highlighted red, whereas the controller is highlighted green. Okay, so watch this. If we were to go ahead and select that helper, it starts to rotate in the Y, it's locked down. Okay, we don't have that dual connection anymore. But notice this, if we were to go to our engine control, now we can control the twisting of that engine. Now I don't know about you, but it's rather coarse, the control that we're getting. So let's say we go ahead and fix that so we have more finer control. I'll go ahead and right click the slider, and to do that we need to insert a function before this engine rotation. The function is as follows: capital DEG, capital TO, capital RAD. Alright, from there I'll go ahead and put the engine rotation in parentheses. Okay, so that this function will be applied to this expression. Okay, so watch this. If we were to go ahead and choose update, go back to the custom parameter, now we have much finer control. We've simply converted radians to degrees, or in our case, degrees to radians. Okay, great. So let's say we go ahead and do the same thing on the left side. I'll head over back to the parameter dialog. Now you have a number of options here. You can either close this out and redo the entire process, or you can leave this open and just navigate to the next object. And what's nice is that if we were to, let's say, just refresh these, I'll go ahead and just select another object and refresh this. If we were to go back to the other object, let's say our controller, and refresh, notice it'll take us right back to the parameter that was wired. Okay, so we can select that, we can go back to the helper and go ahead and refresh, and it'll show us our connection. So that's one quick way of finding our connections in case we need to update them at any point. Okay, we want to make sure they're going to be selected to get to that expression. Okay, so again, I'm going to go ahead and leave this engine rotation up. I'll go ahead and select the next helper, refresh that. Okay, notice we're going to need to navigate to its rotate Y track. That's underneath transform, rotation list. Okay, this is what we get when we freeze our transforms. We get a new rotation list to work with. Okay, so here's the old one, frozen rotation. But the animation is going to be applied to the new one, zero Euler rotation. Alright, so we want to get to that zero Euler, open that up, and there's our rotate Y. So now we can go ahead and choose the right arrow, which is going to be the bottom one. Before we connect, we can type in our expression, or we could just connect now and type it in later. Type in the function, that is. So that's deg to rad, or degrees to radians. Okay, and I'll concatenate engine rotation, just putting it in parentheses. Choose update, close this out. Let's go ahead and test this out. We can select our left engine, and notice this, it's going to control the rotation of both. Alright, so now we have steer controls. Alright, so that's basically wiring parameters in a nutshell, and it's very commonly used for rigging. Alright, this was just a quick demonstration of it, but we can do a lot more deeper things with it, more complicated setups by using wired parameters.